the sun rose over the streets, and all was still. It was in the city of St. Paul, Minnesota, that John Farren clambered down from the window of his high school, his nearly transparent hair bobbing up and down as he traversed the wall of the building. He would often do this, but this was the first time being caught. As he jumped down from a brick ledge, a student pointed him out, and the resident teacher, the PE teacher, told him to go see the principal. Begrudgingly, he began the walk to the office. He sat in the office, pale and clammy with cold feet. He was called in. The only words spoken by the principal were, "If you're going to climb out of a window, dye your hair. It's impossible to not notice someone with hair like yours." He then left the office and would never climb out of the window again. John was born December 19, 1932. His family was Jan, an older sister, of whom he was usually in a good relationship with, Helen, a loving and gentle mother, and Forrest, a stoic and silent father. His parents divorced when he was very young, but he always split time between the two houses. He loved them both dearly. His dad had a shipping business, so he always helped load crates into the vans and trucks that transported the goods. His mom had no job, but despite this, she was a very busy woman. She was always taking care of her own, her friends' kids, and doing housework. He and his sister had to help with the chores too. When washing dishes, a large and drawn-out process involving a lot of complaining and squealing, his sister always washed and he always dried. That's just the way it was. He was enrolled in a smaller country school and had few friends. He went skiing with one, a rare occurrence, on a small hill near his house. Sadly, he broke his leg when he fell. Because this was the early 1940s and medical procedures were not as advanced as they are today, he had to get a full left leg cast and a half right leg cast. As you can imagine, this made going to the bathroom extremely difficult, but there was a solution. There was simply a large hole in the cast surrounding his posterior. Every time his sister saw him, be it in public or otherwise, she would say, "I can see your hiney." Eventually, the cast was taken off, but that comment made such a great impact that it has stuck with him for the past 70 years. His dad used to tell him stories about the trouble he would get into when he was a kid. Back in the early 1900s, outhouses were merely perched over a hole into which the waste would fall. Forrest and his friends would, late at night, move the outhouse about 6 feet back from the hole. In their blindness, the unsuspecting victim would ready themselves to sit down only to fall into a pit of waste. Later, as some form of crude divine retribution, one of Forrest's accomplices slipped and went tumbling into the pit. Spluttering, he jumped out of the pit and ran. Conveniently, in the next yard, someone was drying clothes on the clothesline. He discarded his clothing and selected some from the line. He put those on, left his previous clothing behind, and he and the others ran away. John Farren was always a free spirit, much like his young father. He was once walking through the woods in autumn. Because Minnesota has such fertile soil and a moist climate, the trees turn spectacular colors, oranges, reds, and browns, all reflecting the colors of home. He was completely enthralled. So enraptured was he that he completely forgot where he was from. He had no idea how to get back at all. Eventually, he did find the way back, but the memory of the trees was never fully erased, lingering at the edges of minds for the years to come. He, also like his father, was a bit of a troublemaker. He was at his mom's house, a 2-story rental, and one of his chores was mowing the lawn. There was a small tree on this property, just about 3 inches wide. This tree, however, would never get any wider than 3 inches, as John cut down the tree with his lawnmower. He remembers his mother and the landlady having a talk about that. It wasn't just with his mother. One day at his crate loading job, he was hungry, exhausted, and tired of loading them. One of the next few boxes happened to be of the candy bar holding variety, which was very tempting. The enticing idea of a delicious, fresh chocolate bar became too much, and, carefully, he pried open the box and stole a single bar. He never got busted, and never knew if his dad found out, though he bets that he had his suspicions. Dads do tend to know these things. Early in life, John was a paper boy, much like many other boys around town. He would regretfully awaken every morning about an hour before the sun rose to do his rounds. The job, for the first half, was miserable. The cold air bit at his skin, and the wind provided by the movement of the bicycle only made it worse. The satchel looped around his torso and over his shoulder was filled to bursting with newspapers, and the strap fit into him. To add to the misery, He couldn't see where he was going very well, only being guided by the occasional house light or street light. Eventually, when he was largely done, the air was warmer and the strap no longer dug into his shoulder. As he finished up the last few houses, the sun rose. The beautiful yellow-orange glow peeked over the horizon, and all was still. The streets, the trees, the houses, and John himself were all bathed in warm, golden light. It was a new dawn, and anything could happen. Through the process of this interview, I have learned more about life than I have in the past 13 and a half years of my own. People with a strong will, fiery blood, and a passion for living can power through unlikely circumstances. The mischievous boy who played pranks, stole, and got into trouble with landowners grew up into a peaceful man. He is filled with knowledge and stories, and has experienced more than most get the chance to. I am grateful for that. Without these stories, I never would have truly gotten to know my grandfather as he once was, filled with youth and mischief. Though he is now aged, though his wrinkled face is soft and kind, sharp eyes stare from beneath bushy eyebrows, reminding me that the mind never truly changes, only learns. Thank you.